We are just hours away from the first round of the 2022 NHL Draft. It's already been a busy morning, but we have lots to talk about here with plenty more news and rumors. We get the latest on Alex Debrincat. Will he be moved during the first round of the draft tonight? We have the latest on the Maple Leafs and their search for a goaltender. Could they turn to Ottawa's Matt Murray? Will Rasmus Sandin be signed? Could he be subjected to an offer sheet? We'll talk about that. Plus, we have the latest on Jacob Chychrun in Arizona. And is Matthew Tkachuk available? There's been a sudden random buzz around Tkachuk and maybe being traded by the Flames. We'll discuss that scenario, plus some signings and other news coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have tons to talk about, so let's dive right in and get started. So first up, I want to talk about the LA Kings adding to their front office. They've hired Manon, Rheaume, who was the first female to ever make an appearance in the NHL. Of course, a goaltender for the Tampa Bay Lightning many years ago. She's been hired as a hockey ops and prospect consultant. So that's another prominent female getting an opportunity at the NHL. So that sounds like a great addition there to the LA Kings front office. We got some signings as well. The Ottawa Senators have signed defenseman Dylan Hetherington to a 2-year, 2-way contract. He gets a pretty big AHL salary. Hetherington's not likely going to be an NHL regular, but he is an important piece for the AHL team in Belleville and has proven that he can be a call-up option. He did get a handful of games in the NHL and actually didn't look too bad. He's going to be paid $750 when he's in the NHL, and he'll have an AHL salary of $325,000. So he'll definitely be a part of the leadership group leading the American Hockey League team. And the Minnesota Wild have re-signed trade deadline acquisition defenseman Jacob Middleton. They've come to terms on a 3-year contract valued at $2.45 million. Of course, he came over from San Jose, was a nice addition. Certainly somebody who's kind of caught the attention of a lot of NHL people after that trade. It was kind of an under-the-radar pickup by the Minnesota Wild, but they were quite pleased with him. And I do wonder as well if we'll see a Wild defenseman, of course, other than Middleton, possibly traded. If not today, then sometime in the next little bit as we get closer to free agency. They do have a lot of NHL veteran D-men on contracts. Plus, they'd like to get more opportunity for young defenseman Calen Addison, who's certainly knocking on the door and I think deserving of more of an NHL chance. But besides Addison, they already have 7 NHL defensemen under contract here. So obviously you have long-term deals in effect for some of their top defensemen, so you know they're not going to be going anywhere. I do wonder about a player like Matt Dumba, though, who's got 1 year left. Will they move Dumba to make room for Addison? Time will tell. Be certainly another interesting scenario there to watch. Now, it looks like as well in Edmonton that the Oilers are waiting on a couple of things to be confirmed between Mike Smith and Duncan Keith. There is word that from NHL media that cover the Oilers that it seems more likely than not, but it's not confirmed, so we can't say for sure, that Duncan Keith very well might retire. So obviously that could have a major impact on their salary cap situation. Of course, Mike Smith, on the other hand, also like Keith, has 1 year left on his contract. He is expected to possibly end up on long-term injury reserve and not play next season. We're waiting for that to be confirmed too, but that's where things stand here as of right now. In terms of Keith, though, apparently he was interested in possibly retiring before he ever went to Edmonton. It sounded like the Blackhawks obviously would have had a fairly substantial cap recapture penalty because he has one of those long-term contracts that are not any longer legal. And if those contracts have players retire before they expire, then there are cap penalties by the signing team here. So certainly, I think Chicago kind of talked him out of retirement, and he basically made an offer that, okay, if I'm not going to retire, if I'm going to play, I'd rather be closer to his child, which obviously get him into Western Canada, so he's happy at Edmonton. But there is talk about possible retirement now. There's been a lot of talk that the Oilers might consider moving Tyson Barrie, more of a cost-cutting measure than anything else. Obviously, they feel pretty confident in the abilities of Evan Bouchard to be more of the offensive power play defenseman. So Barrie's services are somewhat redundant to a degree, but at the same time, if Duncan Keith retires, they probably don't want to be without Keith and Barrie on the back end, so it certainly reduces the chances of that happening. So obviously this decision could have a bit of a domino effect. His cap hit is $5.5 million. He turns 39 just in a short time here, July the 16th. His actual salary, though, for the year coming up is only $1.5 million, so it's substantially lower than his actual cap hit for the coming season. So this is going to be a twofold effect here. This will impact the Chicago Blackhawks because they would have a cap recapture penalty similar to what we saw happen to the Vancouver Canucks when Roberto Luongo up and retired on the last bit of his contract. So they would have a cap hit for the coming season of $5.5 million, and they would have a cap hit next year of $2.2 million. So a total of $7.7 million in cap recapture penalties over the next 2 years. Now, the Edmonton Oilers wouldn't completely be off the hook for the entire contract. The 5.5 cap hit wouldn't entirely go away. They would gain $3.4 million in salary cap space, which is the difference between his cap hit and his actual salary for last season, which is the last season he was active, which was $2.1 million. So $3.4 million in extra cap space can go a long way. So obviously, whether or not they have that will make a big difference here. So we'll see. But obviously, that 13-year contract that was signed in 2009 is almost over. But like I said, there's not too many of those left around the NHL. But we saw it happen with Luongo in the Canucks, and obviously it could happen here again if Keith does indeed retire. I mean, $1.5 million is nothing to, be really to scoff at. But his career earnings show he's made, I think it's $73 or $74 million. So if he plays, he gets the $1.5 million. If he doesn't, he won't. So he may not be overly concerned about that. We'll have to wait and see. That could have a big impact on how the Oilers proceed. Now, on to a trade that we almost seen and a trade that we might see. We know the Senators, even though they've made it clear in the early part of the offseason that they were quite happy and content, if need be, and that's the important part, is that if need be, to go into next season with 3 goaltenders. Obviously, they signed Anton Forsberg to be the starter. They have Gustafsson, who is most likely the guy who they'd like to be the backup, but he's also no longer waivers exempt, so they cannot send him to the American Hockey League team without putting him through waivers, which puts him in danger of being claimed and lost. So they don't really want to do that. And of course, they have Matt Murray, who they signed to a 4-year extension upon getting him by trade a few years ago from the Penguins, and that is not a marriage that has materialized at all. In 2 years, he's had a very difficult time staying healthy, and he's been incredibly inconsistent. He's had his moments where it looked like he was going to claim that starting job and looked really good, but there's always been something that has interrupted it, whether it's an injury or just for whatever reason he lost something in his game and it just collapsed on him. He can't keep it consistent, and I don't know what it is. And I've seen pretty much every game he's played in a Sens uniform, so I can certainly describe how he's been for them quite in detail. But apparently there was a trade lined up that had him going from the Ottawa Senators to the Buffalo Sabres. The Sabres were willing to take that contract, but he apparently has a form of a no trade. We know he has a modified no trade. I think there's 10 teams he can block, and Buffalo is on his list, and he would not budge to waive it to make the deal go through. Apparently he submitted his teams, and he's sticking to that. Now, I don't know what other teams obviously are on that list, but the Sabres are one of them, and he would not budge. But here's the thing. We did later find out through insiders like Frank Saravalli and Darren Dreger what the deal was. The deal was the Ottawa Senators were retaining salary. We don't know the exact amount. I'm guessing probably a couple $1 million on his contract. He's getting paid just over $6 million. So there was salary retention on Ottawa's side for the next 2 years, and they were supposed to be flipping first-round picks. So Ottawa right now is at number 7, and the Sabres were flipping pick number 16. So the Sens would be dropping back 9 spots in the draft and retaining money to move on from Matt Murray's contract. So that, to me, was not a great deal. Now, of course, we knew there had to be some kind of sweetener added in order to make this deal go through. The Sabres were also obviously quite content to do it. They need a goaltender to play with Craig Anderson. They're okay taking Murray, especially for that kind of a price. They get to move up another 8 spots in that draft pick. They have multiple first-round picks, as we know. That gets one of those mid-rounders up to number 7, gets them 2 high-quality prospects along with their own first-round pick. That's a great deal for the Buffalo Sabres. So, in a sense, this is probably the best save that Matt Murray has made as an Ottawa Senator. He stopped this deal from taking place, and he saved Pierre Dorion from himself. I don't know what Pierre Dorion's thinking in this case. Yes, you want to move on from Murray if at all possible, But to drop that far down in the draft and retain money, that just seems too good to be true, in my opinion. I have no doubt that the Sabres were all over that, which is why it came close to happening. Now, however, though, the Murray trade talk has not come to an end. Now, of course, we know there's other teams interested, and there's reports that the main other two teams that are kind of having conversations, we don't know how serious they are, though, is the Arizona Coyotes, who need a goalie, in Toronto Maple Leafs. We know the Leafs have a connection to Murray from the Sault Ste. Marie days in the OHL. We've seen Dubas and company make numerous deals from their prior OHL connection, so that would not be shocking if another one happened. Now, of course, at the same time, I'm sure Leaf fans are going, why would they want Matt Murray? And to be honest, I'm kind of wondering myself, but if they think they can get their hands on another high draft pick for taking him, then that explains why. Obviously, GMs feel like they can probably take advantage of Ottawa in this case, and yes, they take on Murray, but they get something pretty sweet to go along with it. Now, the Arizona Coyotes, of course, need another goaltender as well. It's believed, and I can only stress believe because we don't know 100%, that he would go to either of those teams, but we can't say that with absolute certainty as I record this video. So we will see where it goes, but the Sens are working hard at trading Matt Murray. There's been a lot of talk about the number 7 pick in Ottawa being moved. Many NHL insiders have said it's the most likely top 10 pick to go, and now we kind of know why, and it doesn't seem like it'd be a wise idea. Hopefully that deal getting squashed will help them, and they can find another way to do this, because that just does not make sense. Now, another move that would make sense for the Senators is that Pierre LeBrun is reporting that in free agency, the Senators do seem to be a very interesting and legit option for free agent forward Claude Giroux, of course, who was in a situation where I think he'd be open to returning to Florida to see if he can make another run with the Panthers, but we do know that Florida is very tight up against it, like a lot of teams, and would have a very interesting, difficult time to retain his services because of their cap situation. So we will see. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he goes to Ottawa, but for all the rumors we've heard about the potential and him going home to play for the Senators, it does seem like at least it's something he's willing to seriously think about, and that they are legitimately in the running. So time will tell. That might be how they get their top 6 forward that they want, and maybe that number 7 pick, instead of using it to get rid of Murray, you can get yourself a top 4 defenseman, because that would be the better way of going about things. Now, speaking of top 4 defensemen, a guy that they apparently are in conversations around is Jacob Chychrun in Arizona. I do wonder if Matt Murray could be involved in that kind of trade too in some capacity. There would have to be other options going to Arizona. If they're going to trade Chychrun, they're going to want a good haul for that, plus an extra sweetener to take Murray. So I don't know what would all be involved in that scenario if something like that went down. But they're not the only team, of course, but the number 7 pick has been mentioned as being in play, possibly for a player of that magnitude. Ideally, they need a right shot D, not a left, so I don't know if he's the perfect fit. And I certainly like Chychrun a lot, but I also have my reservations. I'm not really sure how I feel about that for them, but I know from New Jersey standpoint, that number 2 pick is also something that could be in the mix for Chychrun. There was some reports in the last day or so that Columbus was right near the top of the front runners, you could say, to landing the Chychrun services, or the sweepstakes, if you can call it that. And now there's reports saying that Columbus may have taken a step back, and there maybe not be the front runners anymore. And if that number 2 pick is in play for him, that would explain why, obviously, that they're kind of maybe not the front runners anymore, because that's pretty tough to beat when you go to number 2 in the draft. Of course, Arizona already has the number 3 pick, so would they have 2 and 3? They could maybe grab Slafkovsky and Cooley, assuming the Habs take Shane Wright, or if the Habs take one of the other guys like Slafkovsky, then they can get Wright and Cooley. Either way, they're getting 2 phenomenal prospects, right? So that would be very interesting. Of course, we don't know that that's going to go down, but the fact that it's even being discussed makes it very interesting. We could see some chaoticness tonight at the NHL draft, so we'll see where that goes, but Chychrun definitely in play, and a few teams are in the mix. Alex Debrincat, reports are Mark Lazarus, the Chicago beat reporter for The Athletic, says at this point he'd be more surprised if we don't see Debrincat trade tonight than if we do. Reports are indicating that the Hawks are really working hard because they are kind of giving teams a bit of a deadline here, because they really want into the first round of the draft tonight, because they don't have their first round pick. Of course, Kyle Davidson wasn't the GM at the time. The previous regime, under Stan Bowman, traded that pick to do that massive Seth Jones trade, which now that pick belongs to the Columbus Blue Jackets. So the Jackets have multiple first-rounders thanks to that. And, of course, the Hawks, even though they're a bottom team looking to rebuild, don't have a first-rounder. So they're trying to get in, and Debrincat would be the main player they have that's been mentioned in the rumor mill, at least, that could accomplish that. So they're kind of giving teams a bit of a deadline. We know LA was interested, backed away, traded for Fiala, so they're likely out. You get the Flyers are reportedly in the mix, but were reportedly hesitant to move the number 5 pick. So we're hearing that maybe they're out, but maybe they get back in if the price changes a little bit. We'll see. I think they're definitely interested to some degree for sure. And there's other teams too, but a Debrincat trade does appear very likely based on reports that it very well could go down tonight. Now, the situation between the Toronto Maple Leafs and Rasmus Sandin makes you wonder if things could get ugly. Could we see a trade? Could we see an offer sheet? There's lots of talk and speculation around this player. They obviously got defenseman Timothy Liljegren signed without much trouble, and they expected to hopefully get Sandin under contract for a similar number, similar term, but that's proven to be a bit more challenging. He seems to be reluctant to sign without having more clarity, not so much about talking about dollars and cents here. This is more about his role on the team, and I guess his way of kind of securing himself that he's going to be a regular NHL player, which I'm sure in his opinion he feels he's earned and deserves at this point in his young NHL career. We have already seen the Maple Leafs re-sign defenseman Mark Giordano, who was acquired at the deadline, which essentially bumped Sandin further down the depth chart and kind of cut back his options to play in the playoffs. They already have Jake Muzzin ahead of him and Morgan Riley on that left side as well. And of course, Sandin does prefer to play his strong side. So it kind of creates a logjam there where it's almost impossible to do so. Now, right now on the right side, they have TJ Brodie, who normally plays with Riley, who's actually a lefty but plays his weak side. You have Justin Hall under contract for one more year as well. You don't know if Ilya Lyubushkin's returning. And of course, you get Timothy Liljegren, who just signed here as well. Even if Lyubushkin doesn't return, you still have 3 right D already signed as well. So it kind of creates a bit of a logjam. So with the Sandin situation, I kind of wonder if they might force themselves into maybe making a move. There's already been some talk before, and it hasn't really come up again in the last little few weeks, but maybe moving a guy like Jake Muzzin to create not only cap space, but more room for the young defenseman as well. So if he's reluctant to sign, and he doesn't have arbitration rights, so they can't easily settle a deal that way, so it could drag on for a while. That's possible. And the other thing to factor in here as well, you got to remember, is guys like Sandin and the Leafs organization, they've been demoted back and forth between NHL and AHL a lot, especially on off days, to save whatever cap space they can, which obviously impacts their paycheck. So he's been sacrificed quite a bit. So he's lost money, he's lost playing time, and now he's being told, oh yeah, no, you're good. But at the same time, like looking at the depth chart, where's he going to play? Did they sign Mark Giordano to a new extension to sit him out every night? I don't think they did. So you got to wonder what's going to happen here. Would a team pull the same kind of stunt you seen with the Hurricanes do to the Habs and overpay him on an offer sheet like you saw Kotkaniemi? All they got to do is a 1-year deal. Let's say they offer him 1 year at $4 million or something like that. The Leafs would have an impossible time matching that because of their cap space. The compensation going to the other team would have to give to the Leafs would not be very much. You got to think teams would consider something like that because it would be an aggressive move and a way to get the player. So we'll have to monitor that situation here as well. I don't know if it's going to lead to a trade, but it's something that we have to watch. Now, the whole Matthew Tkachuk thing, there's been a big buzz all of a sudden came out of nowhere today about are the Flames going to trade Matthew Tkachuk? And to a degree, I've seen from ESPN, John Buccigross put a tweet out saying that he felt it was likely going to happen. He says he had a sense that it was going to happen. I believe the original tweet might have come from Andy Strickland. Of course, he's a St. Louis reporter and has a lot of connections to the Blues. We know Matthew Tkachuk is originally from St. Louis, and he does know the family very well and has had a lot of intel on the Tkachuk situations before. So I do wonder if maybe some of that might have been premature. A lot of this is based on the fact, I think to some degree, between what a couple of reporters have said and maybe other media kind of jumping on this, that they're assuming at this point, which is probably not a good idea, that Johnny Gaudreau is leaving. Because we don't know that. Yes, Gaudreau was not signed. It doesn't mean he's leaving. He obviously sounds like he wants to see what's on the market, what he can get elsewhere before he makes his decision for his professional life and personal life, which he's earned the right to do, which as much as it's stressful for fans, and I get it, you don't want to see your favorite players or your top guys on the team leave, But unfortunately, it's a business, and that's just the right that he's earned at this point. And it does sound to me like the communication could probably be a little bit better, but you have to wonder what's all true and what's being said in that regard as well. But all of a sudden, it's like, well, if Giroux might leave, they're likely going to move Tkachuk, because Tkachuk could very well take them into a one-year contract, and they could be in the same boat this time next year with Tkachuk as they are with Giroux right now. Matthew Tkachuk is 1 year away from being eligible to be an unrestricted free agent. So if he insists on it, he can sign a one-year contract. And if the Flames and him don't want to come to terms on it themselves, he can file for salary arbitration. They can go, he'll get a one-year deal at pretty big money. We'll say, I don't know, $9 million or something like that. And then he'll be set to expire next year. Now, that doesn't automatically assume that he's a goner. Of course, they'd be eligible to do an extension as early as January, and they'd have a window of about 6 months to work it out on a longer term extension for him to stay in Calgary at that point. But does he want to do that? Can they come to terms with that? They're possibly, and I stress possibly because, again, we don't know, losing Giroux for nothing. If Giroux walks now, I'd hate to see the Flames panic and trade Tkachuk thinking he's going to do the same thing to them next year. Now, they'd get a big haul. There's no doubt. He's an extremely valuable player. But would any team acquiring him want to know that they could sign him long term? That would be a big, big deal. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about him going to his hometown team of the St. Louis Blues. There was a lot of rumors like a year ago, last offseason, about a Tarasenko for Tkachuk trade. I'm sure there's probably people out there thinking maybe we'll see that happen. I really don't think that's the case. It would be a lot more than that. Tarasenko is much older. Obviously a productive player, but a different kind of player. They both have a year left on their contract, assuming Tkachuk signs a one-year deal, of course. I don't know. I don't really see that happening, but it's been talked about. It's been out there. There's a lot of speculation from Ottawa, mostly fans, because obviously Brady is the captain of the Senators. Would he want to come play with his brother? A lot of people have had pipe dreams about the Tkachuk boys playing together, whether it's in Ottawa, Calgary, or St. Louis, or anywhere else for that matter. So, and then there's New Jersey. We know the Devils are supposed to be being very aggressive where they offer the number 2 pick for Tkachuk. Like, it's just a complete gong show of Tkachuk rumors that just came out of nowhere and just exploded all over social media within a few hours here today. And at this point, I'm going to say that I don't really think there's much of anything to it as of right now. I don't know if we can say that for long, because I don't see the Flames trading Tkachuk without having an answer from Giroux. I don't see them getting an answer from Giroux until the 13th when free agency opens, and even then it could drag on. I would think they would want to sign Tkachuk if they could, as a way to entice Johnny to come back and play along with them like they did so well together this year, right? So some people are saying, well, maybe Giroux is planning on signing elsewhere and Tkachuk's going to want to be traded to that team so they can play together in New Jersey or wherever. I don't know where. There's just so many things it just blew up out of nowhere and it just got everybody in a frenzy. And to be honest, it's fun to talk about. It's very interesting to think about. I really don't think, at least as of right now, that there's really anything to it. So if you're a Flames fan, I'd say relax, calm down. I think the Flames' priority is to sign Tkachuk and to sign Giroux. Can't promise you it's going to work out or it's going to happen, but I think that's their intent and they're doing what they can to make it happen. And until we get more answers, I don't think there's any reason to freak out and think Matthew Tkachuk is going to get dealt. Could it happen? Sure. Wayne Gretzky was traded, so you can't say that anybody won't be, but I think it's highly unlikely, at least right now. Could it happen later in the offseason? That'd be more likely than now. Could it happen next year? That would be more likely than now too. Could it not happen at all? That to me could very well be the most likely scenario, because I'm sure that they're going to do everything they can to get him signed to a new contract for ideally more than 1 year. But he's got the control, and it's really up to Matthew and Johnny, for that matter, what they want and whether or not Calgary is that. So I guess I can't speak for them. Time will tell, and we'll get the answers here soon enough. But obviously look forward to the draft tonight. If there's any more big news, trades, or signings, or anything major, we'll do a video to talk about it. Otherwise, stay tuned. There will be more videos tonight as the draft unfolds, and we can discuss everything further then. So stay tuned. If you're new, make sure you subscribe. We'll keep you up to date with all the craziness going on in the world of the NHL. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.